Well, Keith Allo prides himself on understanding both sides of show business. We're going to learn all sides of Keith Allo today. How about that? He joins me on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, also a golf broadcaster. And we're going to tell the story of Keith. Obviously, right now, president and executive producer, Frank Beatty Productions, but has worked tirelessly in the world of golf at Golf Channel, had a long run there and a lot of great stories to come from it. And so we're going to learn not just the X's and O's of his business side of his life, but learn more about the personal side as well. Keith, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much for making the time.
Bryan, I appreciate you taking interest. I love that you have low standards, so I'm happy to be.
Well, here's my first question for you. I know one of your other life mottos is to be present in the moment. So in this moment right now, between you and me, what does being present look like from your mentality?
You know, it's interesting. It's not something I always do well. It's something I strive to do because I realize, you're not really guaranteed anything. And I think, early in my career, it was just chasing everything I could do to get experience. But as I started to get more opportunities, I became very aware of taking a step back in the moment and going, wow, this is really cool. Or look where I'm at right now, or look who I'm working with, or whatever the case may be. So for me, it's just about appreciating the fact that this is a business that's not an easy business to make a living in, but it's so rewarding in so many different ways. Not only are you able to be creative and create content that people will watch and enjoy, but you get to work with really talented people. And I think, you got to appreciate that, because that's not, it's not true for a lot of people that work in the country and the world. I mean, a lot of people have jobs behind desks that don't really interact. They don't get a chance to use their creative side. And I think it's never lost on me that this business allows for that. And so whether I'm traveling somewhere great or I'm in the company of some very talented people, I always try to take a moment where I go, remember this is cool. And you should feel appreciative of the fact that you have this opportunity.
What is the best display, Keith, of your artistic genius, where the creativity really starts pouring out?
Well, I would say I'm far short of a genius, but I think what I do really well, or if I had to pinpoint something I'm good at, is I know enough about almost every position within a production group to be dangerous. I serve mostly as producer, exec producer, and director. But what I am fairly good at is putting together a team that's talented and roots for each other. I think it's so important, it's cliche, but this business is the ultimate team game. If there is ever a business that emulates sports, it's this, because every single person in a production, no matter how small, how big, I've done productions that have 120 people on the crew. I've done them as small as 3 people on the crew, but every person is important, and it's without them you don't succeed. You have your A2 doesn't do their job, and you're in trouble. So I believe I'm really good at figuring out how to put that group together. And I think the other thing I do is I hire smart people, and I give them a lot of not only responsibility, but I basically let them know I'm counting on you. I believe in you. Like, I believe you're the guy, you're the woman, you're the person to do this. And I believe in you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to give you what you need, but I'm going to believe that you're going to get this done for me. And what I've found is when you give people that ownership, they don't want to let you down. If they're good people, they don't want to let you down. They don't want to let their teammate down. They don't want to let anybody down. So they self-motivate. And then the ones that don't, you can figure that out pretty quickly, and you politely and respectfully move on from them to someone else. But so I think if I was to say what I do well is I assimilate teams really well. I get them to shoot for a super high quality product. One of the things I will not do is there's never good enough. It's got to be, you got to shoot for something super aspirational and big. And I get everyone sort of leaning in on that. Hey, we can do this. I think one of the best stories is when I was at NBC Sports and Golf Channel, I signed David Faraday to our show there, Faraday. And we decided we were going to do a live show from the Super Bowl. Super Bowl week, NBC had that week, and they had a couple different shows lined up, and they said, great, you want to add so we went into a auditorium. We followed a Bob Costas show. The night before us was a Bob Costas show. He did kind of I guess I'd call it almost like a town hall meeting where he invited in different people and they talked. And so I remember telling my group, we didn't have a lot of people outside of our core team that believed we could do it. We had, I had done the Olympic Hall of Fame before, so I had done live shows before, but really most of the people on my team had never done them. Faraday really hadn't done a live where he was just the guy, right? So I remember telling the group, listen, early on, we would have these weekly meetings. I said, listen, our motto is we're going to kick Bob Costas's butt. Now, I love Bob Costas, and it wasn't meant to be derogatory towards Bob, but I want everyone in that room to believe we're not just this sort of second stepchild here. We're going to do an unbelievable show. And what I will say, without getting into all of it, is our show killed it. We had amazing guests. Tim Tebow, when he was in the height of his fame, was on. We had Joe Theismann. We had a bunch of people, and it was at the Super Bowl week. David was great. Standing room only. We did in this beautiful little theater in Indianapolis. And what was great is that we were kind of the buzz throughout the week of, did you get a chance to see the Faraday show in the theater? So what I would say is, while that's not necessarily genius, what I was able to do is to get a lot of people believe that we can do this. And I was able to craft together a really high-end show that aired at the level of every other network show that was going on that week. And I think from that experience, I think people looked around and, wow, we can do this. We can go up against, the heavyweights.
How did Faraday empower you?
Well, first of all, he's a really smart guy. He's not only smart, but he's a couple steps ahead usually on every conversation. So he's already thinking, two things down. And I think what David and I hit it off in a way that he knew I always had his back. I was never going to make him look bad, but we were going to take advantage of the fact that he was funny, he was irreverent. And if we ever did jokes and skits, which we did, he was always the butt of the joke. We would never embarrass our guests, right? They might be involved in it, but the joke was always on David. And I think he and I understood that early on. This is what's going to make this different. So I think the way he empowered me is that he trusted me and I trusted him. And we found sometimes, I would push back on him. I don't think we can do that. And sometimes he would challenge me. Come on, we need to do this. And I think that pull and tug really created, we got nominated for several Emmy Awards. David did individually, the show did. We were a small staff. I think we had, I produced and direct. I had 3 producers, 3 editors, and then we had obviously camera crews and things in the field. But I think we were a crew of 15, 18 people, and we were going up against some of these shows that had 50, 60, 70 people. So I'm proud of what we did with him. I think he's a unique talent, and he allows you to do some things that other people won't do or can't do. The things that guests allow him to do and ask and go places where no one else can really go. He has that skill, and I think we took advantage of that and made sure that we built a whole brand around him. And he was all game for it. The one thing I always said is that David, once he trusted you, he trusted you. And there's a couple times where I put him in situations he wasn't happy about, but for the most part, he trusted me.
Well, you guys have had a great relationship, and it's been fruitful and beneficial for all. And as you said, Keith, there is this inner belief that you have. But then around any one of your teams, especially with Faraday, there's this belief among your crew that you can do whatever. You can take on whatever challenge. And that mindset, I would feel like you gained early on, in that you talk about believing in others and how empowering that can be. How did your father believe in you growing up? And how did he show you, Keith, that he was on your team?
Well, it's interesting. Both my father and my mother, they were both professors of music at a college. My mom was the vocal side. She had her master's in music, and my dad had his master's in music, and he was the instrumental. And they were a team. And they not only did your typical band concerts and choral concerts, but they actually did musicals 2 times a year, sometimes 3, but at least 2 times a year. And they would take on, back in the day, these were musicals that were Hello, Dolly and King and I and Fiddler on the Roof and The Wiz and all these different musicals that people had heard of. But they would take it on with college kids. So there were no professionals. These were all college kids that were majoring or minoring in theater. And so when I was a young kid, I saw so many musicals growing up, right? But one of the things that I think I sort of inherited from them was this, especially from my mom, but also my dad, but this, they never panicked. And they always believed in who they had in every role. So they would cast someone, and sometimes the person would get cast for a lead and was a little bit almost like, I didn't realize I was good enough to have this lead. And they always had this ability to instill in them, you're good enough. Clearly you're good enough. I wouldn't put you in this role if you weren't. You have to trust me, and I have to trust you. And that relationship that they would create. But my dad was a little bit more of a rehearse it until you got it. And my mom had this really unique ability. And I picked up on this, and this is sort of what I would do with live shows, and actually all shows, is that she would rehearse enough and she would build to opening night. But even going into opening night, there was this little bit of, not everything has worked perfect so far. And she liked that edge because she felt like it made the performers really dial in, because they knew they didn't have it down. And my dad was a little bit more, let's get it all down and go through the whole thing a few times before we get there. But that combination, I think, was a really great combination. And they won a bunch of awards, and they were very successful in what they did. And so I picked up on that when I was young. And I think what they did is they always, whatever it was, whether it was sports, I played a lot of sports. I was a music major in college until I changed my major. I was involved in a lot of extracurricular, and they never questioned it. They always believed in me, and they were not, what you would call today helicopter parents. They let me do my thing. It was for me. It wasn't for them. I always remember them saying, I've had my time playing sports, or I've had my time, performing in musicals. This is your time. You do what you want with it. If you don't want to be a lead and you just want to be a, chorus person, that's fine. If you want to try to attain that's great too. We're going to support you, and we believe whatever you want to do, you can do, but this is for you, not for us. And I think that was really instrumental in it for me.
Well said. Keith Allo is with me, president and executive producer, Frank Media Productions. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, also a golf broadcaster. What about you as a dad, and how much you've taken from your dad, but what's different about the way you father compared to the way your father was towards you?
Not a lot, honestly. I think I parent almost identical. I have a daughter who's 16, and I have a stepson who is 27. And I actually have 2 other kids that are going to be soon to be stepkids of my 16 and 21. But my style is a little bit my dad was never like, I can't remember ever being grounded. Now that may not be a good thing, by the way. But I do remember him being disappointed in me, or expecting more of me, or telling me why what I did wasn't okay, but almost letting me figure that out and figure out, okay, I disappointed someone that I look up to. I don't want to do that anymore. I hate that feeling. And so I sort of do the same thing. With my daughter, it's a little tougher. Girls I think are harder by nature than boys to raise. But I give her, I always tell her the same thing. I'll be there watching your sports, but it's not for me, it's for you. She's a swimmer and a water polo player, and she's also does piano and does recitals and all that. But I always say, look, this is for you. It's not for me. Whether you want to get really great at it, or you just want to have it as something that you do, it's fine by me. I don't care. I want you to enjoy it and get as much out of it as you can, and try to learn some lessons from it, life lessons, what it's like to be disciplined, what have you. And I think that's what my parents did with me. They never pushed me. It was always do what you want to do, but get something out of it. Don't just show up. Put some work into it so you get something, you get a reward at the end of it. And that's sort of what I push with, I'm blessed. I've got kids that are smart. They do their studies, they do their homework. They're good that way. But I try to give them a little bit of rope to learn, but not so much rope that they're going to go out and do, crazy things. So I try to find that balance. Don't always get it right. But it was very important for me when I had kids late, because I didn't have kids until I was in my late 30s. What was important for me is I wanted to be there. My job, like a lot of people in this world, is travel. I travel a ton, but whenever I could, I would work my travel around important events. And when I was home, I always went to whatever event they had if I could. Again, not to helicopter parent, but to be there for them. So when they turned around and looked, I was there. And that was very important. And I think it's helped because it's given them confidence. And I think in the end, they understand that what they're doing, they have to get something out of, or what's the point of even showing up? So that my style really is that. It's not, my career is not the easiest, because there are things that I have missed because I'm traveling. But I did everything I could to make sure I was around, and I would work my travel around it when I'd take I'd take red eyes home if I had to be something the next day, or vice versa. I would take the first flight out so I could get back that night. It just depended on what it was. But I always tried to make sure that they understood that, yes, I have to do this. This is what a responsible working adult does. But I can also do this too. I can be both. And I think that's what I've tried.
How has, in taking that mindset, positively impacted your relationship over the years, and them seeing the effort that you put in over the years, even with all the travel, to be there as much as you can, and how even when that day when you become an empty nester, that they can express that gratitude to you for the efforts, the energy you put into making yourself, like you said, present for them?
Yeah, I I get the sense based on just conversations that I'll hear them have with their friends and that, people that are hanging out. I mean, I think they, especially my daughter and my stepson as well, they were grateful. They are grateful that I show up for everything. In fact, if I don't, they're a little shocked, like, you're not coming. I'm like, well, I can't, because it's, oh, okay. But the point is that I think what they appreciate is that I am there for them and not for me. I'm not doing this for me. I actually really enjoy it. I mean, I really do. I like watching the whole team, not just my daughter or my son. I like watching everyone, but I really enjoy it. And I'll tell you the best time, both my kids were in swimming. And then one of them swam in college, Josh, the 27-year-old, but Bella, I don't think she'll do that, but she swims and she does water polo. And one of the things I love, that time of traveling to a meet or traveling to a tournament, because that's really good one-on-one time that you don't always get. And so, whether you listen to music or just talking about life or whatever, I like those moments, because I think it creates a little bit different bond than what you typically get around a crazy house with, work and homework and, we're eating dinner and people are eating at different times and they've got things going on. I think that one-on-one time, you're kind of trapped in a car or whatever, and you go down and you put yourself under one of those tents and you're there all day kind of thing. I think there's something cool about that. And so I really enjoy it. I think they know I'm going to be there for them is probably the biggest message they get. They know if they need me, I'm going to be there, and I'm not going to give them an excuse. Sometimes I may have to be tomorrow because I've got this going on. I can't change it. Unfortunately, it's too late. But if I can change it, I can be there. I'll be there for them. So I think that's what they got out of it, and that's what I got from my parents. I knew if I needed something, my dad was there. My mom died when I was younger, but same thing. I mean, they both instilled, this is about, you're living your life. We're going to support you. There are rules, got to follow them. But other than that, we want you to, get something out of it for you, and we'll be here.
If I was in one of those cars, Keith, when you're driving your daughter to a swim event or one of your kids to an event, and there's those long car rides, what music is Keith Allo going to turn on when he's flipping through the radio?
We actually get to change. We get to take turns being DJ. So that, what I do is I have a pretty eclectic. But what's really interesting to me is that and I think it's her generation, they love a lot of the music I grew up on. So a lot of the traditional classic rock, a lot of the 80s. She loves that stuff. So I'll kind of randomly through, whether it's classic rock, 80s, and sometimes we'll put on some musicals. Like, I like musicals, and she doesn't like them quite as much, but I do, and so we'll do that a little bit. And then when she takes it over, it's mostly modern stuff. But she got into big band stuff here recently. So when I was in college, I was a music major. I used to play in a big band. That's the old Glenn Miller and Count Basie and all that stuff. And she's really likes it. She'll put it on her playlist, and all of a sudden something from Count Basie will come on, or Glenn Miller, or one of those. So Frank Sinatra. So I think, that part of that is that she is taking piano, and I think she's a little bit more broad in her music taste, which is great. That's the way I was growing up. But generally it's a little bit of everything, and nothing's really off limits for the most part. We just take turns sort of doing that.
How's your singing voice?
Not any good anymore. I was a music major. I was in musicals. I had a couple of leads. I was a lead in the musical Chicago. If you remember, Billy Flynn was the main character in Chicago. I did that. I was in Once Upon a Mattress, which was a Carol Burnett Broadway musical way back when, and I played the Prince. I was in Anything Goes, which is a really old musical, but it had a revival when I was in college, and I played Public Enemy Number 13, which was they had a group, kind of an ensemble lead. So I did some of that. I had a serviceable enough voice to get by for music theater. Like I could do that. I couldn't go out and do solos and, although I did in musical theater, but it's different because you're acting and singing. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a beautiful voice. So I was able, I can carry a tune. I know how to sing on in pitch, and so I could get through. And when I was younger, I was more fearless, so I could do anything. But no, I don't do it anymore. I might trumpet still that I'll break out and play every now and then. I'll do stuff with my daughter on the piano, play duets or whatever. But I can only last about 20 minutes and then my embouchure's shot. I can't do anything else. But I still have fun with it. I just, those are days gone by. But the music theater stuff really taught me how to create a show.
Yeah.
That's really what allowed me when I realized I wasn't good enough for music. Like I knew when I was my sophomore year, I'm like, I love this, but I'm going to teach. I'm not good enough to perform. And not that there was anything wrong with teaching, because my parents did it at a very high level, at the college level. I didn't really necessarily want to do what they did. They were legends kind of in their space. And I'm like, I don't want to follow that. So I kind of said, I'm gonna do my own thing. And to be candid, television seemed like a kind of performing arts in a way, and it's creative. And I'm like, this makes some sense. So I just sort of dovetailed right into it. And, I had a knack for it. I mean, I really did. I felt like I understood it. I understood the blocks that take you through logistically how you get from point A to point B. I understood storytelling, how you tell a story. I understood protagonist and antagonist. I understood all of it because of my music theater days. All those musicals had the same things. It's just now we're doing it in a different genre. So I think that helped me sort of fall into that space.
If you were to create a song, Keith, and you were to write the lyrics that sort of reflected on your life, what genre of music would it be? The tone of it, to describe you, to sort of be, in a way, your biography written out in a song?
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I would probably, as crazy as it sounds, I probably would think it would maybe feel a little bit like a Broadway musical song, or sort of a classic rock, one of those two. Maybe it'd be both, because I mean there are musicals out there that that have classical rock in them. It's interesting. Like we watch Mamma Mia. I took her to the show when it traveled here, and she loved it. And I think probably something in that genre. Honestly, I'm not. I think the lyrics mean more maybe than the music. If I was to write something, I think I'd be more concerned about the lyrics and less concerned about the melody, because I think that that's really kind of the important part of the song. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love certain songs just for the music, especially some jazz and some classical. I actually, when I go and play sports or I work out, I oftentimes listen to classical, because it's kind of a whiteboard for my mind. Like I can think about things, and lyrics don't get in my head. I'm just listening to kind of this canvas of music, and it kind of helps me. So classical is great, but I think if I was to pick one, it'd probably be something where lyrics are maybe more important than the melody.
What would you convey in those lyrics? What would you want to make sure that you got out there?
I don't know. I think probably going back to my motto, which is probably try to be present, try to enjoy what you have. I'm a softie at heart. Bella laughs at me because I'll watch America's Got Talent, and I'll watch the parents react to their kid, and I'll get all choked up. Like it's like looking at me like, why are you crying? I'm like, well, it's so, if you were a parent, you would understand. This has got to be amazing for them to sit there and watch them do this. So I'm a little sappy in that way. I love good stories. I love stories. I tell people that's really, at the end of the day, what we do is we tell stories, right? Almost no matter what we do, we tell a story. You could even say that about a live sporting event. You're telling a story, right? I mean, it's sometimes you're reacting to what's happening, and that's how you tell your story, but you are weaving a story. And so I think, I look at everything we do starts with a story. Starts with something you're telling us, you're doing this for a reason. What's the reason, and what's the message, and what's the story? And I think that, I kind of look at everything that way. So I think, for me, it would tell a story, honestly.
Well, Keith, you've done such a great job of telling stories. And as sort of we wrap up this conversation, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you were able to tell your story.
I appreciate it.
In a very interesting way. I think that there are going to be people, Keith, who watch this and are going to think that they know you really well, and then they're going to learn something new about you. And you know what? When
Wow.
somebody says that, that's the best compliment I could ever get, because that's what this is all about. It's about going deep and learning about the person on a very deep level.
Well, I
Keith,
appreciate that. I would say that's the beauty of this business. I think if you do this business correctly and you are aware of where you are at the time you're doing whatever you're doing, you meet some incredibly talented people. And then you get to know a little bit about their backstory and how they got interested in what they're doing. And I think that's the beauty of this business. I think it really is about people. At the end of the day, every single person matters. Every single person's job counts. And I think that is what I love most about what I do, is the fact that I get to meet really talented people that do really cool stuff. And when you assemble that together as a unit and a team, you can create some really great stuff.
well, Keith, needless to say, you are a shining light in this business. And it's fun tracing back to your childhood and how your dad and your mom really showed their belief in you, and how you've taken that and how many people around you you have fostered that mentality into, and how many lives that you've positively impacted and will continue to.
I hope
Keith,
so. Thank you.
yes, you are. It is definitely happening. Keith Allo, of course, president and executive producer with Frank Media Productions, formerly of Golf Channel. He really is a shining star in the business of sports and media. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and a golf broadcaster. Keith, thanks so much, man, for doing this. This was really enjoyable.
Thank you, Brian. I enjoyed it myself. Thank you so much.